I rise this evening to speak on the Transport and Other Legislation Managing E-Mobility Use and Protecting Our Communities Amendment Bill 2026. A few of us in this place have developed a keen interest in this subject, having been on the committee that conducted the initial inquiry into e-mobility safety and use in Queensland. I'd like to start by acknowledging the work that went into this inquiry by parliamentary and departmental staff. I'd say my Labor colleagues on the committee. I would have thanked others, but we're loggerheads this evening, and the many, many individuals and organisations who made submissions and gave evidence at our public hearings. And I want to preface my contribution to this debate with some context. Last year, 14 Queenslanders died in incidents involving some form of e-mobility. As we heard from the health and hospital sector during our inquiry, how presentations of people, especially kids, with injuries sustained in e-mobility accidents had been alarmingly climbing, with almost 100% increase in reported injuries in emergency departments from 2022 to 2025. In the lead up to Christmas last year, Labor called on the Christopherly LNP government to bring forward our committee's report and announce any government intentions to ban or restrict legal e-mobility devices. Government ignored our pleas, and there are families who bought e-scooters and e-bikes for Christmas who could be unable to use them if this legislation passes. In my community, I've had many conversations about e-scooters and e-bikes, and I've found there's some confusion about what differentiates a legal e-bike from a modified or flat-out illegal device. So to put it simply, as stakeholders got it, but the LNP just didn't seem to. I know that the Chair mentioned butcher's paper, but we don't need to draw pictures. Chris Cox from Brisbane West Bicycle User Group said it best, and I'll quote him, "Electric pedal assist bicycles are bicycles. They do not make you ride faster, they help you ride further. A motorbike, this is no longer quoting, a motorbike, whether electric or fuel, is however a motorbike, and this is what seems to have confused the government. The challenge of stopping illegal bikes rests not only with the Queensland Police Service in our state, but with the federal government who control import laws. They've banned a range of non-compliant bikes, but sadly they're already prevalent across the country due to changes made by the LNP Morrison government during the pandemic. These vehicles are causing fear on our footpaths and significant angst on our roads. It's these non-compliant bikes that I hear about from locals, as well as kids not wearing helmets and going too fast on e-scooters. Again, it's probably often a case of e-scooter products being illegally modified to achieve the high speeds. It's these illegal devices and poor rider education that Labor wants to stamp out, and that's why we welcomed the parliamentary inquiry into e-mobility safety and use in Queensland. And that's the other thing I should explain, Deputy Speaker. We've now had 2 inquiries into the issue about e-mobility devices. The first inquiry began on the 1st of May last year, and our report was tabled on the 4th of March. On the 25th of March, only 21 days later, the government tabled its response and the Transport Minister introduced the Transport and Other Legislation Managing E-Mobility Use and Protecting Our Communities Amendment Bill 2026. And now here we are, less than 2 months later, being asked to rush through this legislation. The LNP will probably tell you how the bill was sent back to our State Development Infrastructure and Works Committee for examination. And I'll tell you that our Labor members of our committee feel strongly this legislation isn't right in its current form, because we listened to stakeholders during the whirlwind inquiry into the contents and impacts of this bill. And as I said earlier, the Chair said many times publicly and everything, we've got to get this right. He did say that, and we have got to get it right, and I still don't think it's right. In our statement of reservation, Labor MPs, myself, our Deputy Chair, Member for Cooper, and the Shadow Transport Minister, Member for Aspley, recommended this bill be withdrawn and further work undertaken by the government, including in-depth consultation with key stakeholders. They're the ones who ride these things, they're the ones who know, to ensure any reforms to the use of e-mobility devices is evidence-based, effective, and strikes the right balance for pedestrians, riders and businesses. It's too restrictive, punishing families who are doing the right thing, impacting individuals who use e-mobility to save money, to save the environment, or because they can't or don't want to drive a car. This legislation, and I understand there are amendments, but once again, 122 amendments, and the Chair said there's not. I've got it in front of me, there's 122. 122 amendments. I'm happy to give the Chair some counting lessons, but there's 122. And if the amendments don't go through, it discriminates against disabled, creates complexity with requirements around e-mobility device licensing. The bill, as tabled, sets arbitrary speed limits for footpaths that aren't supported by the Department of Transport and Main Roads standards modelling, and puts the onus on end users to trace back the compliance of their devices with retailers, whether in person or online. We heard it loud and clear that if this legislation goes forward in its current form, there are businesses who will go bust and kids who won't be able to go to school. And the other thing we heard loud, actually I heard a snigger from the member in front of me for Burleigh. It was actually a school that he was at with us where they said that if these kids aren't riding these things, they won't come to school down in that area. The other thing we heard loud and clear from stakeholders is they weren't consulted in the drafting of this bill. Deputy Speaker, I could read out the 10 pages of witnesses and submitters to our inquiry who held reservations about some or all of the provisions in this bill, but I'd run out of time. The LNP may think they got all the information they needed during our inquiry last year, but we've just like we've seen with other LNP legislation, when it's rushed, based on ideology, not practicality, we end up here amending it en loop. That's why we're saying let's stop this now before we get unworkable, costly, complex laws, difficult to explain to parents and carers, let alone kids, laws that cost families hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost assets, not to mention the heartbreak of telling your kids you can't ride the rail trail together anymore, and I understand that may be fixed, but let's see. These are the stakeholders who should have had a say in the practical aspects of the bill, but that's hard to coordinate in less than 2 months. I wrote an article for the Local Times magazine recently letting locals know the changes that were coming in the e-mobility space. My office has received a stack of emails in response from individuals and families who will be negatively impacted by this bill. I've called these constituents to discuss their concerns, and I'll just share one of the many similar stories I've heard here. And I'm not taking the interjections from the member in front of me who's not in his seat.
I don't need assistance from the chair, thank you.
Okay. So, family that goes out for a ride on a Sunday morning with their
Member
kids.
for Koowanba, can you please take a seat? Member for Lytton, I do not need your assistance, thank you. It is happening on both sides of the chamber, and I will call it as I see it. Thank you. Member, you have the call. Thank
you. So a family that rides local trails in our area with their kids on a Sunday morning on scooters. They go out, they love that, the under supervision, the kids are under 12, that will no longer happen. And there's many other stories. I hope some of these issues can be fixed with amendments, but why introduce a rule only to bend it and make it unworkable? Test the amendments as stakeholders, or we'll be back here fixing this up before too long, I predict. So we see, Deputy Speaker, this bill is another example of the Crisafulli crusade against cost of living relief. They scrapped electricity rebates, they scrapped our car rego discount, they hate the idea of feeding hungry school kids. Now they want to make it harder for kids to get to school and families to get active together. The Crisafulli LNP government cares more about making big statements than taking the time to consult with the community and get these big changes right from the get-go. As I've said, if this bill passes this week, it's my prediction we'll be back here soon for tranche 2 on e-mobility after it becomes clear tranche 1 isn't working.